Hello, Scream Demons, and welcome to the Screens from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey. I am one of your co-hosts. I am Casey.
I'm Sam. Let's get screaming.
Have you ever wondered who creates all the amazing special features on your favorite movies on 4K or Blu-ray? I know I have. Well, today's guest might have had a hand in creating some of those inside looks into your favorite movies as we welcome producer, director, author, editor, and podcaster Justin Beahm into the basement.
Thank you for having me, guys. This is going to be great.
Through your own company, Reverend Entertainment, you've created dozens and dozens of bonus features for titles like Child's Play, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Prince of Darkness, a personal favorite of this show, Sleepaway Camp, and so many more. You now have the full Moon Fright Box, Volume 2, coming out. Welcome to the show, Justin. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, glad to be here with you guys.
Well, first of all, congrats on all of those. I know both Sam and I have used your special features many times on this podcast when talking about some of these movies. One of those was included there, Prince of Darkness, when we talked about some Alice Cooper movies. So thank you for helping us out and providing a little insight to people who listen to our show.
Yeah. Oh, Alice is great. That was the first time I had met him. That was really, really exciting for me. I mean, I'm a lifelong fan, so that was the definite sort of check it off the list thing for me. But that turned out great. That was in partnership with Michael Felsher and his Red Shirt Pictures, which was the primary producer on all that. And it was just a tremendous honor to be part of that release. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Yeah, we covered that with Monster Dog, which I know you've
Nice.
talked to Alice about that. That's a completely different movie. But
Yeah, I love it though. All the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I have a question then. So you've worked for companies like Scream Factory, Umbrella Entertainment, Paramount Presents. You've also written many magazine columns. You have your own podcast. How do you get involved with creating content like this, special features, bonus material? How does someone even get started in that field?
By accident? That's the answer. I mean, I would think that's probably the answer for a lot of roles in entertainment, just because there really isn't. It's a business where there's no ladder to climb. There's no set series of steps to take to get to find your way into it. And so saying yes, answering the call. For me, it was, well, it really began back when I was working with Trancas Films, which is the parent company of the Halloween franchise. And I had proposed the idea of doing a Blu-ray for Halloween 4 and 5 because they hadn't made it beyond DVD at that point. And I convinced Anchor Bay to allow one new special feature on each, which was a commentary track. And I did Dwight Little on 4 and Don Shanks, Michael, on 5. And that was really the first time that I produced any kind of special features like this. But it wasn't with the goal in mind of getting into this field. I had no frame of reference for what this world entailed and how to get involved with it, or let alone manage myself while doing it. And that led to the guys at Shout Factory, Cliff and Jeff. Now both of them are gone from that company, but they were launching Scream Factory at the time. And I was at a convention I think it was the one in Indianapolis that Jamie Lee Curtis was at. And I was there on behalf of Trancas and then this nonprofit that Malik and I had co-founded. And I was in the lobby and these two guys walk up to me, and it's Cliff and Jeff. And they're like, "Hey, we love your commentaries on 4 and 5. Have you ever thought about doing more of this? Would you like to do more of this? We have a list of titles that we're considering, and do any of these speak to you?" And not horror, but at the top on the list somewhere was Tank Girl, which is a lifelong love of mine. And I'm like, oh, Tank Girl. And I had been at the time talking with the director, Rachel, the director of Tank Girl, about doing a book on the making of the film, like an expanded making of kind of thing. And so it just that seemed to make a lot of sense to me. But there was a lot of other great stuff on the list too. And not having any reason to say yes or any confidence in the fact that I could make anything happen, I was like, yeah, I would love to do this. Let's talk. And then I think maybe the next week, Cliff gave me a call. And from there, I was off to the races. And then that grew into other companies over time. And it's been one hell of an adventure. I'll say that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Casey and I, we've done some interviews that have wound up on Blu-rays in the past, and like every time, it's so cool to be a part of a movie that you enjoy, that you appreciate. Like, what does that mean to you that you get to put a little bit of yourself into these movies that like you grew up on or you've just loved? Something like Tank Girl. What's it like getting to be a part of a release that like so many fans are going to enjoy and watch your work on?
Well, it's an honor. It's something that when I look at the shelves of titles that I've worked on, and I think, man, it's like it's a who's who of my favorite movies and actors and directors. And I've just been so incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity. And for me, the exciting part for me isn't in being on those myself. The exciting part for me is in bringing people into those projects to be represented. So giving them a chance to tell their stories, to share their life story in some cases, or the rare people who never get interviewed and now have a chance to talk a little bit about the craft that they work so hard at. That's the stuff that really makes me happy about all this, is the people that are on those discs. It's not about my name. It's really just about having the opportunity to give someone else the chance to have that conversation, you know?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and you
awesome.
do on your special features have people who maybe have never talked about that movie. I know one movie in particular. You did the remake of Willard. You did special features on
Yeah.
that, and you had the rat wranglers, the animal wranglers.
Yeah.
They did a commentary, right?
They did. That's one of
Yeah,
my all-time favorites too, and I caught some shit for that because,
like that's who I would want. Like if it's not gonna be Crispin Glover, I want to know
well, I
what
was
these
working with
rats are doing.
Crispin.
You know?
I wanted Crispin. We had been messaging, and he was completely on board. But he was over. I can't remember what country it is, but he was over looking at buying a castle that he could shoot because he's been making his own films for a long time, in addition to the stuff that we all know him for in terms of Hollywood. But he had been in the middle of this movie that was like a 5 or 6 year adventure for him, making it with his dad. Of course, his dad recently passed, unfortunately. And that led, anyway, I was working with Crispin on being a part of it. He was on board. I was talking to Bruce, his dad, at random hours of the night when he would think to call me and share stories from when Crispin was a kid and all this. So it was going to have Crispin involved, but he got stuck over there with this whole financial deal with the castle. And so he very apologetically was like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And it was like right up to the deadline. I'm like, we can still do it. We can do something remote. He's like, there's nothing here. I don't, you know. So the rat guys, that for me, I'm a big animal lover. You know, I don't eat meat or anything like that. And uh, I've always been fascinated by how animals are treated in film. And that has gone very bad a lot historically. But there are some who have a really great reputation for that stuff, for how they treat the animals, how they are prepared for set. And when I first started digging in on Willard, I started to find that seemed to be the case on that one. So I thought, ooh, here's my chance to bring these people in. And these guys have been in everything. They've had animals in just about every big movie you've seen in the last like 40 years, but they had never been on a commentary, certainly never been interviewed. So I wanted to have them come in, and we wouldn't just talk about Willard. We'd talk about how they do the training of all sorts of animals and stories from other films as well. The commentaries offer that kind of opportunity because you can really stretch your legs on that stuff. And they were so nervous prior to the session that day. I'll never forget it. I'm like, you guys, I'll be in there with you, helping keep things going, and it's going to be so much fun. And we all walked out just all smiles. And it turned out to be one of the best commentaries that I've ever been a part of. I'm not usually on this stuff, but if someone wants me there for comfort, then I'll do that. If they don't have the confidence maybe to fill the space, they're nervous about, what if I just start talking about what's on screen? So in that case, I'll happily step in and serve as a moderator. And that's really what it was on that one. But man, that turned out so awesome. I think I love that track.
Yeah, I love hearing stories from people who you would never expect to hear stories from on releases like that. So yeah, appreciate you doing doing commentaries with stuff with people like that.
Absolutely.
So this is a sidetrack a little bit, but being an animal lover and having worked on special features for Alligator, this is a dumb question. Did you ever get to meet Morris before he passed?
I didn't, no.
Oh, no.
I loved, that's a movie that I absolutely adore, and that was one on my bucket list. Like, we have to make this happen at some point. And when they called me on it, I was overjoyed to have gotten that gig. And I ended up doing Alligator 1 and 2 for Shout. Both of, I mean, two very different movies, very different people involved with the whole thing, but great stories behind both, wild stories. And for me, a lot of the crazy Alligator stuff relating to Alligator was just on the suit and the animatronics and things like that. Kane Hodder is credited as being in the Alligator suit. And he's like, I don't think I was. Oh, wait, I have a memory. I think I remember this pain in the ass thing I had to wear, but he had nothing to say ultimately about it. But he ended up in part 2 and as a thug in that one. So still included him in those 2 releases. But the animatronic Alligator stuff was pretty hilarious. And then I went on a deep dive because I wanted to find that mechanical alligator. It actually ended up at in like Miami State or something, or university. It ended up in Florida at a university, and it was wheeled out during football games as their, so whoever's the Gators in Florida, that's who it is. And they bring this thing out, and they would have cheerleaders jumping on it, jumping off of it. I guess it just went through hell as being part of this school as their kind of mascot on rollers that they would bring out. And I wanted to do a whole piece on that, but Shout's like, no. We got to, some point, we have to reel you in on this stupid shit that you want to do. And that was one of them that got axed, but it was pretty cool.
I would have watched the hell out of that special.
Yeah. Well, now working with Umbrella now, not to jump ahead too much, I have so much freedom with all of the stuff I'm doing with them. And we also have the benefit there of they always include nice booklets with their releases. And that was relegated to real special releases for Shout. And it's not a real common thing for them to have a real, especially like a book style booklet. But with Umbrella, that's the place where I really get weird on these releases with them is I take crazy side roads in these booklets, and it's an absolute blast. And the alligator story absolutely would have been in there had I had the chance to do that in print. I understand they didn't want to allocate disc space. Okay, whatever. But anyway, it was a pretty cool story.
Well, can you walk us through like working on a project, whether it is for Shout or Umbrella, but you get the initial prompt of, hey, this is what movie we're doing. Mm-hmm. How do you go from that to scheduling people to do interviews, to then editing the interviews, and then finally the release comes out? Can you kind of walk us through like what the timeline looks like for how a special feature gets made? Yeah.
It usually begins the same way with all these different companies where they come to me with a title. There have been some that I've taken to companies, like Sleepaway Camp, you mentioned. I took that to Shout. Silent Night, Deadly Night, 1 and 2, I took to Shout. Haunt to Ronin Flicks. My friend Scott and Brian made that, and it got the shittiest studio release on like DVD only or something. And we're just like, what is wrong here? And so I was so upset. And I was in Walmart or something one day, and I saw this DVD sitting there, and I just texted Scott, and I'm like, can we fix this? Can we make this happen to like remedy this situation? And then I found kindred spirits at Ronin Flicks on that one who were like, we love this movie. we would love to do it. Let's make it happen. And whatever you guys want to do. And so Scott Bryan and I just went nuts. And this was during COVID, which was an absolute nightmare to traverse doing special features during that time. But anyway, that ended up really cool. But those are rarities that in the scenario where I've taken something to a distributor, that doesn't happen very often. Typically, they call me or email me with a title that they've got. Let's just say a title. And they say, would you like it? And I say, when's the due date? Here's the due date. Okay, that fits. And then most of them just let me go crazy. They let me do whatever I want for the most part. Paramount involves a few extra steps because there's legal has to review the people, and they because their titles are in-house, they're bound to contracts in a different way in some situations than distributors would be. So they may be beholden to some contractual language that prohibits someone from participating if someone else participates or whatever. Paramount's a little more complicated, but once I get the title, the next thing I do, especially if it's a movie I'm not familiar with, but in all cases, I start digging around to see who's alive, what are they doing now, what's my wish list. So I make a wish list of people that I want to have on board. And then I just start reaching out to them directly if I can. That's the best way to do it, not having to deal with agents, but otherwise through managers or agents. Sometimes it's through a friend. If I know we have a mutual friend and I'm like, hey, you're friends with so-and-so, can you help me out and connect me? That's happened a bunch of times. But that outreach is really the sort of point of inception for everything that follows. And then I have it naturally, my wish list is whittled down as people say yes or no. And then I start scheduling them wherever they are, or in some cases I will travel to them. I do go to Los Angeles a lot, and so when I'm out there, I really maximize the time. So I have cinematographers. I have a couple core cinematographers in LA that can shoot with or without me being there, of course. They don't need me. But then I have people, as the years have gone on, in all these other pockets around the world, where I have someone in Paris, I have someone in whatever, just all over the place, because wherever people are, that's where I need to shoot them. And so I make arrangements for the shoots, and then I start doing my research, which is always super fun and very in depth, because I want to be prepared for any direction they take the conversation. That's how I really like to do the interviews, is make it more conversational than like, okay, now we're to question number 5, so stop talking about whatever you're talking about. You can kind of tell when someone's conducting the interview and they are just sort of churning through their list. My belief is you follow the person where they lead you, because you want them to be comfortable and open. You want them to love it in the end. It's not just about your deadline and the audience's excitement. It's like, this is their story. Let them take it where they want to. And so that's the interviews. I do the research, which can lead all kinds of crazy directions in terms of trying to track down background information on people, and then shoot it. I either have the footage in hand then if I was there, or I get the footage sent to me, and then I start accumulating materials. So I'm always asking everyone that I shoot, do you have any photos? Do you have any video that you shot during the production? Like, what do you have? Any memorabilia? Because I want to get as many visual elements as I can for all of these, which isn't always easy, especially on older movies. But generally speaking, people are really excited to share whatever they've kept from a production. And so I grab that. I try to find behind the scenes elements, promotional materials, press kits, and then I start cutting and assembling and creating graphics, and that has evolved a lot over the years. I still have an infinity to learn about the editing process. I think I'm still pretty rudimentary compared to some guys like Felsher's, like a master of great animated stuff, and I'm learning as I go. In the beginning, I was working with editors. I would hire someone and then sit with them and be the biggest pain in their ass as I was No, it was really fun working with them because I would go and hole up with them for a week or whatever it was, and we'd create something together. And as much as I enjoy editing on my own, I do miss those days when I had the chance to combine effort with someone else too. So it's kind of it's generally the same for every project, but there's always surprises and there's always going to be challenges that you face too, like any other job, anything else. And there are great discoveries along the way. I've had things take a very different turn in their layout and design just based on what I found in the interviews. So that's the real mysterious adventure that's associated with this stuff, is what you find while you're in the room with them during the conversations, and see where that leads you.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned earlier, as I'm gonna jump to Umbrella Entertainment, because you said you have more leeway with them. You can kind of go nuts with
Yeah.
doing work with them. Your next big release coming out is one I'm super excited for. I know Sam's maybe rolling his eyes at this. I don't know. I'm a huge Full Moon fan. So you're doing Full Moon Fright Box Part 2 coming out from Umbrella Entertainment. And in many ways, like, Charles Band is the innovator of the special feature. He was putting the video zones on the Full Moon tapes in the 90s, giving you that bonus features, the making of, after the movie, after you'd rented from the video store. So what's it like for you to now, having watched those growing up, to now, hey, I'm basically making the modern video zones for something like Full Moon?
When I worked on Full Moon Fright Box Volume 1, the very first thing that I started working on creating and putting together and tracking people down for is a documentary on video zones. Because they are so, it's almost like they've been lost in the general conversation in terms of their importance. At the time when DVD first came around, most of what was being thrown on discs was pulled from Laserdiscs. Now, Laserdisc is where special features really were born. That's where that stuff started. They wanted additional content. They had extra room. They could do that. But Charlie, and this was in association with Paramount, the Video Zone stuff really grew out of his partnership with Paramount, and the financial benefits of that, I guess you could say, allowed him to be able to include this stuff. And so he always had a crew showing up at his productions to capture the behind the scenes, going to the special effects artist studios and filming there, and making a big deal out of everybody involved with productions, which I always deeply appreciated about his approach, because it wasn't just the actors. You would have John Carl Buechler and showing you how the mechanics on puppets work, and it's so endlessly fascinating, all that stuff. And I think that Charlie is an interesting guy in so many ways, but his studio is still going. They aren't creating the stuff like they used to. They aren't even creating the kinds of movies really that they used to. It's not like Troma, where there's a real consistency over the years to what they're doing. Charlie has always been all over the map. And in the next, well, should this series continue, I'll say, there's going to be a further exploration of sublabels and things like that I want to do. Because he had everything from children's films to like Moonbeam. Then he had Surrender Cinema, which is like Cinemax softcore stuff that would play late at night. He had a distribution label for music. He had a record label. He had all these toys. I mean, he is a hustler. And that's one thing that everybody agrees on, who I've interviewed about all these things for in the Full Moon world, is that like Charlie will get things done and he will never stop hustling. In fact, my favorite quote on Charlie Band is from John Carpenter years ago. When I interviewed him, I did this career retrospective thing for Fangoria magazine eons ago, and I just played a word association game with John. I would say a name of someone or a location or a film title or whatever. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And I threw out Charlie Band, because Charlie gave John his first work in LA. And that relationship helped embolden John, I think, as a young filmmaker. And so in that sense, Charlie's a lot like Roger Corman, where so many directors started cutting trailers for him, and then they're learning the beats, the rhythm, the key moments in film. And these are the ones who went on to create great stuff of their own, but they grew up in this sort of incubator of creativity. Charlie, in some ways, is very, very similar to that. And Carpenter's proof of that. But what John said of Charlie is he paused for a minute, and then he goes, when the apocalypse happens, there's going to be two things left on Earth. There's going to be Charlie Band and cockroaches. You can interpret that a lot of ways. I interpret it as he's never going to stop hustling. He's going to live forever, and he is going to keep his youthful energy, which he still has. If you see him at conventions or when he does screening appearances, he's been doing roadshow stuff where he, I mean, it's like,
we had him on our show, and he was a ball of energy. I'm like, well, how after all this time?
He loves it.
Yeah.
He loves it. And you have to respect that.
Yeah, yeah. And he still makes disparaging comments like, "Oh, I'm getting older" or whatever, and it's like, you're not acting like it.
Yeah.
He hasn't slowed down in like ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Video Zone was kind of like Laserdisc, Video Zone, that's kind of the birth of special features. I feel like the 2000s were kind of where that really took off with like DVD. You were seeing a lot of like 2-disc collector's editions of things, and then that kind of fell off with streaming, but it's been kept alive. Like the torch has been kept alive by these boutique labels, by people like you. What has that been like, keeping that flame lit in a world where like a lot of people are just looking at content. They're not looking at movies as like something to study or something to look behind the scenes. Like, how does that change how you approach these things? Or does it? I guess
it's a weird time right now in that it's a very, very strange time in the business as a whole. It's a strange time right now. And I think that I believe people are always going to want to know the stories behind the things they love, whether it's film or music or a building. People want to know about the architect and the architecture and the materials that were used. This is humanity. This is how we are as curious beings. And so I don't think these kinds of things are ever going to go away. It's just going to be a format change. I think and no one knows what that's going to be next. Streaming, no one's pinned down, as you said, the special feature game. HBO does some of it sometimes. Game of Thrones always ended up having special bonus content at the end of every episode eventually. At a certain point, because people just crave these things, even on that big commercial level. But I have created, I've done documentaries for streaming only titles, and there's the most heartbreaking projects that I've been part of because that stuff is non-existent now. Yeah. If I do a documentary and it ends up on Full Moon Fright Box Volume 2, you have that on your shelves. It can live there forever. You can return to it whenever you want. If someone says, "Hey, did you ever?" Yeah, let me pop in the disc, or let me pull that off the disc and send it to you, or whatever. But with the streaming stuff, I made these things that I was very, very proud of, and they were supposed to travel with the films on different streaming platforms. And maybe initially that happened for a minute, but now they're not only not available with the movies anywhere that I can find, I can't even find mention that they exist. So I can't even like add them to IMDb because I don't have a link to prove to IMDb that they exist, which is crushing for how much work all of us who were involved put into those things. Those were in association. It was a joint venture with Paramount, Blumhouse, and maybe it's AMC or something, AMC Plus. And they did 3 originals. One of them's a Marcus Dunstan film. And you can't tell me that Marcus Dunstan's fans wouldn't want every one of his movies on disc. Of course they're going to want that. but there's no plans at all. And I've sort of poked my head through the weeds 2 or 3 times now in the several years since I did these, asking about potential distribution or even picking up the rights to do distribution. And it's just a big mystery to everybody. Like, well, we're not really sure who holds the physical, and there don't seem to be any plans to do anything with these. And so, I mean, that's the same reason why I've never been a writer for the internet. Is like, I don't want to write a story, put that time and effort into it, and then it's like throwing a penny in the ocean. I don't care about hits. I don't care about followers and that shit. I want these stories to be told, and I want them to be saved and preserved and treasured, and to have that person who I feature be able to direct someone there and say to their kid, hey, see, here's my story, or whatever it is. But the internet, in a flash, it's gone. It's the same thing with the streaming stuff. It's so short, the attention span for those things. And I think it's really unfortunate that really none of these companies are paying attention to adding those features to the streaming platforms. And maybe the audience there doesn't want them. To your point, though, Sam, boutique labels. The boutique labels, when you have companies like Vinegar and everything under their umbrella, lack of a better term, all these sub-labels that they have, when you have TerrorVision that just cropped up and is doing very well, these guys are doing really out there stuff. They're licensing movies that a lot of the people that were involved with the films never thought would see the light of day again. So that gives me hope for these streaming titles, where now maybe no one cares, but these cast members are going to go, they're all young, they're going to go on to careers, and maybe some of them will land, and then people are going to want to go back in that catalog, and maybe this stuff will get licensed someday by someone who really does care, because no one really seems to right now in relation to those. And I'm eternally grateful for these labels. I've done work for Vinegar, for TerrorVision. Like I said, Ronin Flicks is a small label. And it's a different kind of conversation with these folks, because they're in it for the passion. They're in it for the preservation aspect, and which means so much to me. And I have a lot of reverence for people who approach this stuff that way. Not to say Paramount doesn't, not to say that Shout doesn't, et cetera, but to put your money behind something like Hollowgate, which TerrorVision did, which is a direct-to-video movie that I loved as a kid. I still have my tape that I bought when a video store sold it off decades ago, because I'm like, this is never going to be seen any other way. I have to hold on to this. And when I found out from Brad at TerrorVision that was being licensed, I was like, oh my God. And so I was so excited. And they're doing it for the right reasons. So I haven't lost hope in this. I think, like I said at the beginning of this portion, that it's a format change eventually, and maybe it will transition from a disc to something else. Who knows what it will be? But I think this stuff's always going to matter, and I think it'll always be relevant, even if there's a time where it doesn't matter. Just like vinyl. Vinyl's now the dominant format for music. Who would have guessed that 10 years ago, 20 years ago? No one. Not a single person. You couldn't give away records back then. And now, look, you got Jimmy Kimmel holding up a vinyl record every night for whoever's on his show. I mean, so hold out hope, people. Continue believing. Carry the torch, as you say.
Yeah.
No, too. Like, it's, it makes these movies special when you can have something, like, I love my Alligator 4K disc that has all of the special features on it. Like, I have Krampus the Naughty Cut, like all of those releases that just, they're movies that meant a lot to me at a certain point in my life, and to like be able to go back and revisit them, and not just revisit them, but get to dive into the actual making and the art of it is so cool. And like, it's awesome that we have people like you to document that and to help tell those stories. I love that.
And guys like people like me we're lucky, because there aren't very many of us out there doing this, because it is one of the least obvious fields to try to get into in film, and it's certainly no way to get rich, I'll tell you that. But those of us that are doing it, everyone that I know who's in this side of the game is doing it for that same kind of passion. They're doing it for that reason. But we're lucky because without these labels still investing in it, we wouldn't be doing this. And so, yeah, I'm excited to do it. Yeah, I'm driven when I get the gig, but it all rolls back uphill to the decision by someone, a distributor, a studio, to actually put time and money into something like this. And for that stuff, I'm eternally grateful.
So I have a completely off of movies question for you, because I know you published a book called Roadside Memories: Beloved and Bizarre Attractions from North America's Past, which is about like those weird roadside attractions that we all see whenever we're on a road trip.
Yeah.
And I know you're from Iowa as well. Me and Sam are as well. What is your favorite? First of all, tell us about the book, and then the follow-up question. What is your favorite Iowa roadside attraction?
Ooh. Well, the book came along because years ago I ended up, I don't know, this is like 4 years ago or something. TV Guide has a magazine called Remind, and it's an entertainment nostalgia magazine that comes out every month. And they asked me if I would come in and be the guest editor and structure an issue for Halloween. This is like 3 or 4 years ago. And so I made it all about the Halloween franchise. I'm like, yeah. And it was really fun. I got to bring in a lot of writers that I'm friends with, people from the Halloween universe. And I mean, it really ended up as a very special publication that I'm sure their regular readers absolutely hated. I always wonder what I wish I could be a fly on the wall when it's a much older audience generally for that magazine, because it's all like 50s sitcoms and 60s rock and roll, stuff like that. I can't imagine what these people thought when they saw Michael Myers. Like, they open up their mailbox and I put Michael right, like the mask right in the center of just nothingness. I'm like, and remind the editor at the time, he's not there anymore, but he was like, no, we need text around it to tell him what's in it. No, I just want the name Remind, Michael's mask, and then some little bit in the right, like all the films, the full history or something. Usually their magazines are not a single topic, but this is the one-off where that happened. And it was tremendous fun. It ended up being very well received by the horror community. And they asked me to come back the following year, and I did Munsters theme for that one because Rob's Munsters movie was just coming out. And so Rob and I teamed up on some stuff for that. And I loved working with everyone there at Remind. And so I pitched them on an idea for a column. I've always been low-key obsessed with abandoned places, especially amusement parks. There's a real fascinating dichotomy there with something that is built to entertain people sitting and rotting and rusting and the earth reclaiming it and stuff. I've always found that very fascinating. So I pitched them on a sort of look back at your road trips really when you were kids, readers. The weird places where you would stop, the oddities, the one-offs in the middle of the desert that you encounter. And they loved the idea, and I've been doing it every month since. And everything in there is no longer around, so they're all closed attractions, and I have the most fun researching these things and the stories behind the people who created them. Because we talk about people who were creative. It takes a special person to decide to create something like an alligator park, or I mean, like the book is full of the weirdest concepts that people really, someone somewhere really got behind this idea and put their everything into it. And some people died for these missions. Some people, Sid and Marty Krofft, who had HR Puffin Stuff and a bunch of other kid shows, they wanted to do a theme park in Atlanta, and they poured like $300 million into this place. It was, I think, 4 floors of different lands that you would go through, all their characters in it. They had all these huge mechanical contraptions and everything. 300 some, I think, million was the price tag on it. It lasted 6 months because it was built in the wrong place. It was in downtown Atlanta where no one wanted to be hanging out. and their hours were weird, and it's in the middle of an office complex. So imagine all these businesses around them, and here's these assholes in the foyer with balloons and trumpets and calliopes and with kids screaming on roller coasters and stuff. It's so funny. But that's an example. Even people who have the means can still fail, but it doesn't matter that they failed. In fact, I'm more fascinated because they failed. Because that's an idea that maybe other people wouldn't have taken the chance on. They wouldn't have rolled the dice, but everybody in that book did. So the book I ended up just with the idea of compiling the first 27 entries of the column into a volume and expanding on each one of them a little bit, adding additional graphics and some background information, a list of the rides and things. And so it offered people, it's justifiably different than what people got in the limited space that's available in the magazine every month. And that's what it is. It's a compilation of those. And so then when I get to 20 more or whatever, we'll do volume 2 and we'll just keep it going. I mean, I didn't have any goals of it selling very much. It's such a niche thing, but it's been very well received, and it's been really, I'm so surprised and thrilled that people have picked it up and paid attention to it and stuff, because it's been a lot of fun. In terms of my favorite Iowa roadside thing, man, I've covered Iowa twice in the magazine. I did Chapman Fun World in Cedar Rapids, which when I was growing up, we didn't have, well, we had Adventureland in Des Moines, but that's like forever away when you're a kid. We didn't have anything like that around here. The closest was Chapman Fun World, which had one water slide. It had bumper boats. It had like batting cages and a miniature golf course where it was so jank, but it was great. Everybody who's my age, around my age, remembers this place so fondly because their parents would just drop us off there, and there were so many birthday parties there. It's not around anymore, but it was really special to everybody in the area, like the kids in the area. It really meant the world. And so I featured that, and then I've just finished an article on a place called Seymour Acres, which is from Marion here, actually right where I live now is on the land where this place sat, where there was an amusement park. I think it was the state, maybe the state's first, that was here, and some crazy stories behind how it grew and what happened there. And it grew out of this guy's obsession with roller skating, of all things, I found out. You go digging through these histories and you just find out he had been accumulating roller rinks and just operating them from afar, and one thing led to another, and he and his wife dreamt up this idea for a dance hall and a skating park here, or a skating venue, like a roller skating place. And it led to him having a carnival come to town once, and they fell in love with the idea and decided to just start buying carnival stuff. And then it became this like a theme park here in days when that was not common, especially here in the Midwest, where your season's going to be short because you have winter and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Iowa, I was born in Dubuque, and so there's the Fenelon Street elevator there. That's pretty cool. That's still functioning. I think it's still the world's steepest railroad, what I'm talking about, on the side of the hill there in Dubuque. That's pretty neat. Tom and Roseanne. This is not a roadside thing. When Tom and Roseanne Arnold lived outside of Tumwa, they were working on building this mansion. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah.
And
I remember my parents telling me about this as a kid for some
reason. They moved to this town. It was somewhere near I can't remember the name of it, but it's the town where the American Gothic house is, where you can go there and actually see the house. And they even opened a diner there, Tom and Roseanne's Big Food Diner. And I went to that once with this girl when she was scouting colleges. I was maybe a junior in high school, and she was a senior at some other school. And I went with her for a few days to go look at colleges and whatnot. And we drove through that area and ended up eating at Tom and Roseanne's Diner, which was so bizarre because not only did they have Emmys in glass cases there that she had won, but they also had pictures of them naked from a Rolling Stone photo shoot, like rolling in the mud like pigs. And that shit was on the walls in there. It was a different planet. So I should say Tom and Roseanne's Diner is another oddity from Iowa's
Yeah.
past that is long gone. But they did initiate construction on a big mansion in the middle of nowhere, I guess. And then they separated, got divorced, and whatever. And the initial skeleton, like some portions of it, remain to this day. And I guess I haven't been there, but I've seen videos of it. I'm fascinated to go check it out, though. I hear it's kind of cool. That you can wander around in the ruined remains of their relationship, I guess you could say. And in that same region, as a final note on this, that is still around, would be the house in Villisca where the axe murders happened.
Yeah.
I've always been very captivated by that case. And my friends, the Rundles, made a wonderful documentary on it many years ago that I recommend people pick up. Living with a Mystery, I think it's called. They're great filmmakers that continue to do that. And the axe murder house is the most garish, exploitive thing in the world. Had that not happened so long ago, I can't imagine anyone being okay with how that's been handled. Have you guys seen that place? Have you been there?
So I've never been. I have always, on my way to Des Moines, would always see the Villisca like exit.
Yeah.
But I've watched like video of it, and it's always like the creepy house, and then you like turn across the street, and it's like normal everyday America.
Yeah.
Just the most normal looking neighborhood you could ever be a part of, and then there's the haunted murder house right across the street.
Back in like right after high school, a group of my friends went and stayed a night there, and they invited me along, and they thought it was because I was scared. I was like, I just don't feel like paying money to spend the night in it. Like, it just felt weird to me. I was like, I'm not a true crime person per se.
Yeah.
You know, like I like reading about it. I don't like the exploitative stuff.
Yeah.
And so it felt wrong to stay there for me. I don't know. Maybe I was a little scared too. I'm a giant wiener, so.
The first time I went there, it was to check it out. It was just to go see. It wasn't spending the night. It was just going during the day when it was open. And I called, and the guy said, yeah, just come down. I think it was come to the museum in the middle of town. You'll find it. And then I can take you over there. And I can't remember what his name was, but he was charging admission for people to be able to go, and not really a tour. There's not much to tour in it. It's like 4 rooms, but it's like you pay admission and you get to go. And then he has this sort of museum. Anyway, I was like, well, I hope I can find this place downtown. And I remember driving into Villisca that day, and that town is essentially a ghost at this point. I don't know what its population is, but it's not many. And you drive in, and I was like, how are we going to know where this place is? And you drive around the town square, and then there's 3 axes hanging in a window with this flashing light that says Axe Murder House Tours. And I'm like, I think we found the place. And I walk in, and this sweet old guy in overalls is like, oh yeah, I'll take you on over, and pay the admission. And it wasn't really much of a museum there. It was very strange. It was more like a place where someone was storing a whole bunch of shit in the museum, quote unquote, and then go to the house. And it was kind of neat, I guess, but it's just like an empty old house. And he had a video that played in the barn that was behind there. I didn't know much about the case at that point, but since then I've read like Ed Epperly's book on it and some other things, and know a lot more. And it's so weird. In fact, there was a point where it's like the Iowa Film Commission or something, wanted to interview me for their YouTube channel to put something out. They profile Iowa creators or something. And they're like, where would you like to be interviewed? And I'm like, the Villisca house. Cause they were out of Des Moines. And I'm like, that's kind of somewhat in between, I guess. And so the interview for that, we shot it up in the attic where the killer allegedly hung out that night, waiting for these people to get home and go to sleep so he could do what he did. But that's where we filmed, was in the attic there. It seems kind of morbid telling the story now, but it was really, it was in good fun. And I was thinking,
Yeah,
what is
no,
Iowa known
that's
for? Iowa, Iowa's known for election stuff and corn. So that people don't know much about Iowa, but they
and
may have heard
murder.
about this case. Yeah, and
We
that's
got the
Yeah.
Villisca Axe Murder House and Tom and Roseanne's
yeah, that's right. Big Food Diner. I
Big
even got
Food
a
Diner.
shirt. I don't know what happened to that though. I actually had a Big Food Diner shirt.
That's awesome.
That's
What's yours?
amazing.
What are your favorite Iowa oddities?
Oh God. So this isn't really an oddity. This is just, do you know Arnold's Park? It's
Where's
like a
that?
small
And
little where
Spirit Lake,
yeah,
Okoboji.
Spirit
Yeah.
Lake. It's
Mm-mm.
by where my mom's side grandparents lived. And I used to go there all the time because we were poor and Arnold's Park was super cheap. There's like, I don't know, 5 rides total there.
Oh, okay. So it was a
The
theme
most
park kind of
janky
thing.
ass roller
Yeah,
coaster ever.
yeah, it's like it's pretty rough, but I used to love going to that place every summer, and I have a distinct memory of high school of hearing some guy like it was like homeroom or something we were talking, and he said something like, "I love Arnold's Park. It's the best park in Iowa." And I went, "Me too." And he went, "I was kidding."
Oh, Jesus. That's awful.
And I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
"Oh, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, totally." But I loved Arnold's Park. It was great. I don't even know if it'd be open now.
Yeah, I haven't heard
Maybe.
of it. I would think I would have
It's
heard of
still
it.
open, Sam. It's
Is it
still
still
open, and
open?
that
Huh.
roller coaster is still there.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
It
That
is a
thing was
wooden roller
squeaky and
coaster, so
creaky.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, it is rough.
How
Yeah,
cool.
That was squeaky and creaky back when I went there. So
yeah,
And there's there's a unique ownership when you embrace a place like that, especially one that other people scoff at. I always find
yeah.
that. That's how I am with
yeah.
movies and things too.
Oh yeah.
I am definitely drawn to things that are shunned by
Yeah.
others. And so 100%, that's really neat. What a good memory for you.
I actually did a roadside attraction 2 years ago on the way to Des Moines to watch a Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper concert. We went to the Clear Lake, the day the music died.
Oh yeah.
So we
Yeah,
went to
Buddy
the
Holly.
crash
Oh
site, and then we went to the museum and
yeah.
did the whole shebang. And then the crash site is literally just like a pole sticking up in the middle of a cornfield
Yeah.
with like a bunch of sunglasses and memorials and stuff that people have left. But
Right.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. I grew up a huge fan of Buddy Holly. And
yeah,
God, it's so heartbreaking that occurred in Iowa. It's so sad. I've been to the Surf Ballroom, but I've never seen a show there. I've been in the lobby, which is just rock and roll history. I mean, it's,
yes,
it's music
yeah.
history,
It's so
not
cool.
just rock
Yeah.
and roll.
Yeah. Yeah. The
That's
Surf
very cool.
Ballroom is one of the coolest places in Iowa for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and they book neat shows in there. It's not just the obvious stuff. They get some good acts in there. That's
Yeah.
neat.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up, Justin, with our final question. Don't worry, it's not related to Iowa. We got our Iowa talk in here.
All right.
But it's a question we leave everybody off with. We love double features on this show. Whenever we talk about a movie, it's always a double feature. So our question for you is, of all the movies that you've done special features work on, what are 2 that you would program as a double feature? You're having a movie night with friends, popping popcorn, getting pizza. Like what 2 movies from your catalog that you've worked on would you show?
Based on the movie or based on like the things that I did, like documentaries and stuff? Just based on
Oh,
the
you're
movie?
watching everything on this disc. You're watching the movie, and then you're going through all 3 commentaries after, and then all the bonus features.
I'm looking at the shelves right now and I'm trying to think of what would be a good double bill on there. There's obvious things like Friday the 13th stuff with Sleepaway Camp. That would make a lot of sense. Right now I'm in the summer zone for sure on movies.
Yeah.
I'm watching all camp and outdoors and that kind of thing. I love that. I guess I just have to leave it at that. I think that or Silent Night, Deadly Night 1 and 2. Though
Yeah.
it's not summer fare, but
Then you're just watching the first one over like 1.5 times.
kind of, yeah, yeah. But that's a
Two is
fun
my
one.
favorite.
I love
Love that
to.
movie.
Yeah.
I love to. And I was so delighted to find that there was a real richness to the stories behind that. It was not just a cash grab by the people who made it at all. Lee Harry is actually a devout film lover and filmmaker, and I was really taken by his story, and Eric's too. And those guys were absolutely fascinating, and I'm still in touch with them to this day. I just talked to Eric a couple days ago. But I guess I'm gonna, maybe it sounds like a cop out, but I'll say the Friday the 13th box set. Let's just do them all, and then Sleepaway Camp, and then if it's winter, we're doing Silent Night 1 and 2.
Yeah, love that.
That's awesome.
Well, your next, I believe when this comes out, your next project that will be coming out is that Full Moon Fright Box Volume 2. You mentioned that there might be a third one. Is there a certain Full Moon movie you want to cover going into that one? Because I have one that I think you all need to cover in these, but do you have one where you have your eyes on it?
One, man, there's some real cool stuff in their catalog, and there are some that are not as celebrated. This has been a bit of an education for me on some of their titles too, because like in Volume 2, there's Seed People and Shadow Zone. I hadn't seen either of those before. Well acquainted and a lifelong fan of Sorority Babes,
Yeah.
which is in Volume 2, and of course Puppet Master goes without saying. But one that a lot of people brought up that were involved in the world of Full Moon is Arcade. And
yeah.
that movie,
We're covering that on our pod next month.
oh great. Great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody who seemed to touch that project really carries it with them. And so they're still evangelizing about, well, that would be great if you guys do more. Just try to get Arcade in there. And so I've run that by Umbrella when we were doing Volume 2. I'm like, do you think we can get Arcade? And they looked, and it wasn't on the list or something that could be licensed or something like that. So it wasn't in the second one, much to my chagrin, but I guess that would be one of my quick answers. But man, that's a deep catalog. I would have to look at a list to see what else would be in there. What about you? You said you had one in mind.
Just because you mentioned Charlie having his own music label, I think Blood Dolls needs to be covered.
Yeah.
So you can talk about the music side of the movie.
What I like about these sets is that they're not just the Puppet Master films in a box.
Yeah.
It's not forcing, but it's encouraging people who buy the box to really get into all different sides of what he's done. Like, look at that lineup: Puppet Master, Seed People, Shadow Zone, Sorority Babes. That is a very eclectic mix, and that covers a lot of the spectrum that's not either porn or kid stuff that Charlie was involved with. And I think that's really cool. That's, for me, is like a mixtape from this studio that has done so much that you could have Volume 28, in 20 years, and you could keep this train going because there's just so much there and so many stories yet to be told. So I hope it continues. I really sincerely do. It's been a tremendous amount of fun. I know Umbrella's had good success with them, and everyone who's involved is grateful to be called in to do stuff, because outside of the video zones, these things haven't had a lot of expanded releases over time. I mean, Charlie's cranked out a bunch of different versions of everything on DVD over and over, but he wasn't really adding much to them. So it's cool to be able to do that. It's cool to actually start tacking stuff onto these movies now and giving people a reason to buy them again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we appreciate you doing stuff like this and for taking time out today to talk to us about how the hell these things even come to life. So, Justin, thank you so much for coming on, chatting with us. Where can people find you online and keep up to date with what you're doing and following your work?
Just my name, Justin Beahm. Social on all the Instagram and Facebook and that stuff. JustinBeahm.com is my website. ReverendEntertainment.com also takes you there. So from there, you can really find pretty much everything. And there's the podcast and the book and all that stuff is there. The podcast is kind of dormant again right now because of my schedule, but I'll get it back going again soon. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate you reaching out and welcoming me. This has been great. It's been great.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.